I'm sure it can seem almost impossible right now to go online without that new cat game coming up in discussion. The cat game, or Stray as some people have decided to call it, is indie developer BlueTwelve's first foray into gaming, backed by the small publisher Annapurna Interactive, who you might know for some of its other published games, like Outer Wilds or What Remains of Edith Finch. Yes, it's safe to say that Annapurna made a solid choice in backing BlueTwelve's first game, as the cat sim has taken the industry by storm. While some of you may find the endless conversation surrounding the game rather annoying, I'm going to talk about it anyway because, frankly, I don't care, and also, cats. But the hype is for good reason, however, as what is on offer here is a game that showcases a fresh and creative twist on the classic puzzle platformer genre that excels at creating a believable and intriguing world begging to be explored. If you had shown me the trailer for Stray only a few years ago, I probably would not have given it much thought. Through all of my life, I had never really had a pet outside of the odd goldfish or two, nor did I ever really have much interest in having one. Needing to care for something other than myself, while adding another chore to the already never-ending list, plus having to deal with the unspeakable things you have to clean up after them, another life form in the house just didn't really seem like my cup of tea. But then my girlfriend at the time found a stray kitten, only a few weeks old, roaming around her work as she was getting ready to leave for the night. She immediately called me to ask if we could keep it, and naturally I said no. But we came to an agreement that we would keep it safe for the night and then take it to a willing shelter the next day. Well, after picking up the kitten to take it home so she could go buy it litter and food for the night, the tiny Molly leapt out of her cardboard shelter and sniffed around before making herself comfortable in my lap for the rest of the ride home. As you might have guessed, we never ended up taking her to a shelter the next day, and instead I reluctantly agreed that we could keep her, choosing to name her Nibbler Freya, after the wise Nibblonian from Futurama and the witch in the woods from God of War. Even though it took me a very long time to fully warm up to her, she eventually stole my heart and won me over. I tell you all of this, well, mostly because I really just wanted to talk about my cat, but also because she drastically altered my view on pets, enough so to change my long indifference to our furry little companions. And so instead of feigning interest for the upcoming cat-focused game Stray, I was fully invested. As cliche as it might be to say at this point, Stray really does do an excellent job at portraying the feeling of exploring the world through the tiny eyes of a cat. The game puts you into the paws of a stray ginger living with its pack on the outskirts of a walled and domed city, and right off the bat you're introduced to the game's adorable and cat-specific mechanics, which prove to be both thoughtful and just plain fun with how BlueTwelve have implemented them. At any given moment you can press B to have Stray meow on command, and it's truly a miracle I did not end up breaking the button with how often I mashed it during my playthrough. As far as getting around though, you'll also get an introduction on the platforming basics like climbing, jumping, and running. Really, I'm shocked that no game has attempted to use this perspective for the genre up until now because cats make for some of the most natural platformers around. Squeezing through tight spaces, effortlessly bounding big gaps, and balancing across pipes, planks, and any other skinny elevated surface is where they thrive. There's a very clear and consistent attention to detail by the developers, from the pitter-patter of scurrying paws to the purring heard during load screens. It is always hilarious and downright satisfying getting to solve the game's mini puzzles in just the most cat-like ways, whether that be knocking things off of ledges to clear a new path, or clawing at a window shade to pull it open. This works so well, in fact, that in an early section, as I was enjoying mischievously walking across a keyboard to type nonsense on a computer, I had inadvertently solved the puzzle to open the door to the next room. Moments like these really showcase BlueTwelve's love for cats, but is cemented even further by the inclusion of mechanics that wouldn't have been necessary to progress the game forward, but would have left a much hollower experience without. It's trivial subtleties like Stray licking its injuries, scratching and clawing surfaces, or the idle animations of self-grooming that result in a much richer final outcome. Also scattered throughout the world are these cozy little spots for you to catch some Z's at, and although they don't provide a save point, health, or any other tangible benefits, they were immersive in a way that would have been sorely missed had they been omitted. The full cat experience resonates so well, in fact, that I wish I could go through it again playing as my own cat. It was slightly disappointing not being able to pick a fur pattern or color, a minor drawback which would have really bound my connection to the game's protagonist otherwise. That being said though, it's crystal clear that the developers at BlueTwelve are just as passionate about cats as they are about their games, making sure to put in every extra bit of effort to make Stray not only an accurate portrayal of them, but a celebration of our little feline friends. Being that Stray is primarily a puzzle platformer, the vast majority of interactions you'll have on your roughly 7-hour journey will be had with friendly AIs. After being separated from your pack early on, you'll meet the robot companion BlueTwelve, who can help out by giving you guidance and providing translation when necessary. Don't ask me why it can speak both Catlish and robot, it's not important, just enjoy the game. BlueTwelve forces Stray to wear a harness so it can ride along on our back, and watching our cat reluctantly accept it and flop to the ground is hilariously accurate. The main inhabitants you'll come across in the walled city are these quirky people-like robots who have now replaced the long-extinct humans they once assisted. There's actually a pretty well-crafted story here, one that really triggers a cat-like curiosity to explore every nook and cranny you can find. I would often get fully invested in trying to understand why the robots started replicating humans by wearing clothes and creating art, that each new discovery into the game's intriguing lore would fuel the next conversation or peek into an abandoned building. This is thanks in part to the way the game handles exposition, only feeding you story details directly when necessary and letting the environments tell you the rest. This is especially true in the areas overrun by the game's only real enemy, the Zurks, which basically look like cuter versions of Half-Life's headcrabs that devour you and any robots in their path. Since most of these sections have little to no dialogue, it's up to the environments to do the bulk of storytelling alongside the spare comment or two from BlueTwelve. The world in which these robots and Zurks reside in is gorgeously realized, utilizing its neon-soaked cyberpunk aesthetic well, with each section having its own unique feel and structure. There's a village right in the middle of the game that I immediately fell in love with, but unfortunately, the time spent there is over almost as quickly as it starts. A single side mission can be engaged with in this area, but by the time you reach the quest giver, you'll likely have most of it figured out. It would have been nice to have a couple more minor tasks here with maybe a bit more of an expansive surrounding segment too, because this location is just way too cool to pass up so quickly. The good news though is that there is never a dull moment during the game's 7 to 8 hour runtime, and that is thanks in part to an absolutely incredible soundtrack. Stray's music is a masterful blend of industrial percussion mixed with booming sub bass and ambient synths. Each song has a distinct mood that matches up well with the atmosphere of the section it belongs to. Exploration sections have these fun, light-hearted tunes, which are contrasted by the dark and foreboding music during the more tense encounters. Even music from inside of the game world is great, with the quirky robot tunes heard on boomboxes adding life to interiors, or the busking, guitar-playing robot who strums great music to curl up and sleep to. My only complaint here is that the mix can be rather hit or miss, as occasionally the music is so quiet that it can barely be heard, but then swells to volumes that shake my whole computer desk. Apart from that small complaint, however, the music really ties the whole experience together, and as my Spotify records would show, I've listened to it an unhealthy amount of times because it's just that good. Much like with the music, there are design choices that find themselves expertly balancing between lighthearted fun and darker and serious themes. Police robots with security cameras for heads and a pool-playing AI downloading an aimbot make for some much-needed comic relief from the more poignant dialogue of BlueTwelve reflecting on the human's demise. It's really a shame that there's no photo mode to use because, much like the thoughtfulness taken with Stray's cat mechanics, the atmosphere and design of the walled city has been just as meticulously crafted with the same love and care. There is simply not enough praise I can give to the very talented team at BlueTwelve, who deserve it all for making Stray such a beautifully realized world. When it comes to playing as a cat in Stray, exploration is king, so making sure that each mechanic involved works properly and fluidly is crucial to creating a seamless and cohesive package. The general platforming may seem restrictive at first, noting specifically the way jumps require an on-screen prompt to engage, but this wasn't as much of a hindrance mechanically as you might think. It's actually quite fitting to have platforming function this way, as cats are pretty adept climbers and rarely mistime their jumps. I say rarely because I think we've all seen enough YouTube compilations to know that that's not always the case. Platforming isn't the only mechanic that's well fleshed out either. Much like It Takes Two, Stray does an excellent job at introducing new gameplay styles throughout its many areas, with one section being almost run-and-gun combat, another being full-on stealth, and a third being chase sequences. The run-and-gun section, for example, gives you a UV light called the Defluxer for dealing with the Zerks, but it can pretty easily overheat, forcing you to duck and weave throughout the area until it cools down. Intelligent use of the mechanics ensure you're not abusing the tools provided, and instead force you to incorporate everything you've learned so far. None of these segments overstay their welcome either, but instead linger just long enough for the concept to be grasped and enjoyed without becoming dull and monotonous. Like I touched on earlier, the middle section does unfortunately end far too soon, and could have really benefited from a slightly larger locale and side quest, but other than that, most areas are the perfect length. Some portions of the walled city are these condensed, open world-like areas that remind me of similarly formatted ones in Uncharted 4 and Metro Exodus. It's a nice change of pace from the linear structure of other chapters to spend a bit of time learning the layout of an area while you complete tasks adjacent to the main story. Many of the side quests only reward you with intriguing lore and storytelling, but some will give you these adorable little pins to put on your harness, and I love discovering each one. These minor tasks work exceptionally well too, as Stray does not provide the player a map or guided route at any point, something I wish more games would attempt to adopt in some capacity. Instead of being directly told where to go and following a GPS line, you must interact with the robots for information and use environmental clues to find your way around, like following the glow of a neon sign or the streamers on AC units pointing the way. BlueTwelve can be called on by pressing down on the D-pad if the way is a bit unclear, but like I said before, the design really scratches that itch of cat-like curiosity, so finding your way around is never really an issue. If you do ever miss anything though, there is a chapter selection screen from the title menu. However, some of these chapters can get pretty lengthy, so being able to start at more specific checkpoints would have been nice. Regardless, it's a feature I wish more games would implement, as going back through to get 100% completion is so much less tedious with it. One thing I do feel needs to be mentioned is currently all versions suffer from a fairly intrusive performance problem that sees the game stuttering when loading new areas or autosaving. It's much less pronounced on the PlayStation versions compared to the PC, but it is something to consider nonetheless. I don't think it'll really detract much overall though, as Stray is an expertly crafted machine with a lot of moving gears that all work together harmoniously to create a game at the top of its class. Stray is an absolutely incredible experience, and I loved every second I spent with it. It excels at its many different gameplay mechanics that never once get dull during the entire playthrough. Its gorgeously realized art style and simple yet intuitive platforming mean being a cat has never felt so good. The intricately detailed locations and world design lead to exploration that always left something fun and exciting to find, and itch that sense of discovery that is long missed in modern gaming. With so much to love, it was truly difficult to find almost anything worth criticizing, so a lack of photo mode, customization, and some slight performance hiccups hardly take away from everything else this game has to offer. At only $30 for a solid 7 to 8 hour game, BlueTwelve's first title as a new studio is a true must-buy, and is one of the best releases of 2022 so far. Whether you're sprinting around with the zoomies or taking a well-deserved nap, Stray is a wonderfully Cat-mospheric adventure by one of gaming's most talented, upcoming studios you surely won't want to miss. Yeah, I guess there's no hiding it. I absolutely loved Stray. Every second I spent with this game was absolutely fantastic, and the way that BlueTwelve have decided to represent cats is just perfection. But maybe I'm being just a little bit biased here because I love cats. If I am, let me know in the comments below, and be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. If you want to keep up with what I'm currently playing or just need more of my mild gaming takes, be sure to hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. With that, I have been TheNamesJER. Thanks for watching. See you later!